So here to talk through this Pentominous radar puzzle by Serkan Yürekli called 4. You'll see that the 6 radar clues are all the clue 4, so there are 4 pentominoes around those clues. And we also have 2 different kinds of pentomino letters. We're given U's and F's, and we'll start maybe from the F clues and recognize, as we've used through this week, some different things we can think about them. F's always sit within a 3x3 box, and in this case this is the center cell, and so one thing you should be able to recognize is where we've got the corner and the center. The rest of the F is going to use these 2 cells that are in green, and so we've got 2 options left still for the rest of the shape, but it's absolutely the case that these are edges, these are part of the same shape, and so we've got an either or with this cell or that cell, but a good start there into the grid. That group is joining to this other F shape that's taking these cells, and we now should ask, what can that shape look like? And it's actually not easy yet to say that blue is up here, but there is one more cell around F we can claim for sure. First, notice that there's no form of this F that works. So the F that joins to the top takes this cell, the F that joins here also takes this cell, and the F that dodges this is this F, which also takes this cell. So across all of those, this is the unusual cell, but it's kind of kitty corner from the direction you'd expect to be looking. You expect to be looking up and left, and it turns out just down is the place you can actually force one more placement into the grid. That's going to help us probably with this U shape eventually. For sure, one thing I'm seeing right now is it actually means we also can't take this U straight to the right. So I think we have gotten the U down to just 2 options, this option here and this option here, and there is a way that this can be an N pentomino, so neither of those stands out at this moment as for sure disprovable, but great start so far. Let's come to some other corners. In the upper left, it's pretty easy to see that these F's have to be the same shape, not different shapes. If we try to dodge, we would end up having the last cell for this F off of the grid, so these are part of the same shape. And then we again have to ask, is this F the center cell for the shape? If it were, we'd be making this F shape or that F shape, and we'd have to color through the radar clue. So this is not the center. The 3x3 bounding box is this set where we know the center for sure, these cells for sure. This is not the corner. So this or this are the corner. But notice this F and that F isolate cells in the upper left. So the upper left is a corner and must take this cell. We finished uniquely placing the one F that goes in that corner. It might have looked like it had a lot more choice, but the 2 F clues as well as the spent radar clue force this one. I'm going to jump, I guess, next to the lower right, and that's just because the U clues are a new kind of clue to look at, but they're also pretty quick to think about. If these U's aren't the same U, we'd have a huge issue with an isolated cell in here, and that means there's one of 2 ways that U's can join to think about. Again, this isolates the cell. The one that connects to the upper right is the way these will connect, and that completes this U shape. Gives us 1 cell of the 4 pentomino shapes around this, so we're going to have to be pretty efficient in getting some longer shapes around this one. It looks like we at least know these 2 are part of a second pentomino, and we'll have a third around here and certainly a 4th by here. Let's come to the lower left while we're looking at corners. This U always takes these 2 cells. And there's a root in pentominoous puzzles where when you have an either or option, in this case the either or is this one or this one, it's helpful to note some things that are common across those. With this option, notice that we put in this F, we both mark this line and mark this edge. And just sort of starting in my head because I can visually see already the look of this one. This one marks this edge and draws in this line. So these 2 connections we actually know for sure. And the thing to be then aware of one step past that is where we've got this U defining this bottom border, notice that the only F's we're allowed to put in the grid strand a cell. And so sometimes this is where visualizing a little ahead of the work, this being the first set of things I would mark in, would then recognize and see that we actually have to have the F pack down and not pack up because there is a big issue with this shape. There's not enough room for that U to fit in once we know this connection is forced. So these F's are the same F. That U is coming over this way. We now have this group coming up, and let's sort of see, we've got a few, we can, I think, make some progress on both of these U's at this time. On this bottom U, the first thing to note is that these cells being taken means some of the options we might have seen before, none of them are great, but like an option like this is no longer possible. So we can't take this connection right to the left. That means this is again a cell, that's the 1st, 3rd, or 5th position of a U. And in this situation, being in the 1st or 5th position allows for this shape, and being in the middle allows for this shape, and those are the only 2 U's that I can see fitting in the grid. So the first thing I want to do is actually mark these cells. But here's where I think the radar rule is really key. Notice of the remaining options, I'm always putting 5 cells around the radar clue, which means every other shape is going to be a singleton. So I either have these 3 singletons or these 3 singletons, but this F is always a singleton and is only going to be going outwards from this. So these 2 edges are helpful to know. And they're probably going to help us in the future answer this question. Is this F a different F or the same F? One thing to note for sure is if we ever force this cell to be taken, it is going to be the same F. This is the most critical cell across those groups to think through. So good progress down the bottom and probably some things to do there, but I see another rich opportunity on the left side, and that's because of these 3 U's in a row. So let's look at this for a bit. This has 2 ways it goes. It can come to the left, and coming to the left, it forms a Y shape and then this L shape. And if it comes to the right, it leaves behind these 10 cells, but these always connect. So I think the first thing I'm seeing is that these 2 are always joined cells, whether in that 10 cell group or as part of this big L. I think it's even the case we can say these connect. So this is always part of the same 3-unit shape because these 2 and these 2 are different pentominoes. So like in the option where this is a Y, that looks good. And the option where this comes over this way, it's still true that these are part of the same shape. So that's some of the stuff to mark to make some headway here. These 2 over here do mean that we can cancel off this U on the left side. And I think it can further give us some insights about this 4 group up top. So what's the most forcing thing there? I think one of the more forcing things is when like all of these 3 are coming from the L shape. That means this is a 3rd and this is the 4th pentomino, so we draw on these lines. And in the other situation, remember in the other situation, the U is going to the right, so we have these 10 cells, this cuts off. This would come up, but it again draws in this line. And so I think that line is a disconnect. So there is a 3rd pentomino-ish down here, but this is a distinct 4th one and only in one cell is key to note. And what's going to actually break this whole puzzle apart is seeing that alongside still that same thinking, if we actually put in the only U that still works when this U goes to the right, we now actually get this whole shape in the grid, that we're okay to get a 4th pentomino around the space, but we're leaving behind a single triomino. So the radar clue breaks with these 2 U clues quite quickly after we've marked some of these sub points of progress, which is one reason I like finding these sub points to figure out some of the global constraints of these grids. Knowing that a few cells work together is often pretty key in these puzzles. So this U is left, this gets the Y, this forms the L, this does indeed have distinct shape here. These U's can't join, so this comes down. So this has to be a distinct set. This is a Y up top, this is an N or a W coming across. We can now do a better count and actually know for sure that these F's do come together. The only F that didn't have them come together looks like this, but that's giving a tetromino over here. So this F we can mark effectively in blue and also then mark this edge. And so what we have are 2 pentominoes up top and then maybe one more cell being taken here, but take a cell like this, it's not over to the left, it's not part of the F, must be part of the shape. The cell, same thing, must be part of the shape. So this pentomino's gotten some size to it, but it's now grown large enough we can see if it took one more cell, it's forming a Y near a Y, so this is now a known border. That means this is a W. The cell is not part of the F, so this is completing out a P. That completes this clue over here. It completes this shape from what we've drawn in. Let's see what else it does. Around this radar clue, we have 1, 2, 3 pentominoes, so this U is part of the last pentomino to make only 4 around that clue, so this U is there for sure. These 2 now can't go left, so we're down to just this one option for that U. That puts in an N. This F can't only fit to the right, so it does have to come to the left, so there's no way this goes. It doesn't take either this cell or this cell, and both of those make this a forced red space, so that means that this is an edge because their single pentomino is 3 by 3 in an F shape, so these are a sure P. This F comes across. Notice that there's an F up above, so this is a known edge. That means this has to come down and complete as this shape. So there's an F. We talked about the singletons around this clue. We can no longer have a singleton here, so this has to be this U with this singleton out. And in this lower right corner, we've got a forced P into a forced L, and now all of these cells in this 15-cell group to finish the grid. I like to start by just doing some counterfactuals in a situation like this, so I think the left side's a good one. Let's say yellow is not pink. Yellow is then absolutely forced to be this P, and pink is forced to be this U, so I was trying to get a cancellation like that. So actually, these are the same shape. that means here's pink, here's orange, pink will finish, and orange will finish. So let me just draw on those edges. And it looks like the color is detecting some edges, but there we are. There is our finished solution. And we've gotten through a complex radar puzzle, but with some good uses of how F's and U's both fit into the grid, as well as these 4 clues. So a challenging Friday grid, but hopefully got a little bit of the sense of how to explore the potentials around F's and around U's to make the headway more realistic and measured and steady. I think the left side of this grid was probably the most key thing to do some of that look ahead around, and some of the ways I was marking in these cells or this edge are some of the things to look back at if you're trying to see some of the ways when you visualize the 2 states of a puzzle, the common parts of those 2 states are useful to capture. And these little bits of progress made it quite obvious when the U's fully collapsed to a bad state, as we looked even one step further ahead after that logic. So thanks for the puzzle, Serkan. Thanks for watching this video, and we'll see you again soon.